Good afternoon, everybody. Tim Blowers, National Vice Chair for one more day. So each year on the Communications Committee we carry out a members' research, which is very important. It actually gives the board the direction for the following 12 months. So for the survey 2017, I'm going to run through just the main highlights. Okay, so we do it through the website. It's done through SurveyMonkey. It's quite easy to fill it. It takes about 10 minutes. So there's always a competition in our office who can get it done first. And I think Kate won it this year, didn't you? Because when we get the results through, we actually see each authority, and it gives a little bit of detail of when they did it and what time, etc. So this year then we had 205 responses. And that came from 193 providers within the industry, and that's local authorities, from schools, and from companies that are providing services within the areas. And I'm pleased to say that all 10 LACA regions responded. So I think we can say we had a fair representation of our membership. Okay, so the sort of key results. There's a number of questions that you're presented with, and you can respond either strongly agree or strongly disagree. So what I've done is I've put in the highest scores for the main questions. So number one was, does the LACA represent my industry in a very positive way? And 96.52%, that's quite accurate. Strongly agree. So that was very positive for us. Does the membership provide me with good value for money? 86% strongly agree. Is it an open and inclusive organisation? 84% strongly agree. And finally, does LACA represent our industry to government and politicians? And a very high score there, 94.08%. So that was very encouraging. I think really we're doing the right job, we're going in the right direction. So some more targeted questions now. So what are the three main challenges for the school food industry? And for the first time this year, we carried out two surveys. We've done one in England, which is the normal one, but also Wales had a separate survey because there are some different delivery models there. They don't have universal infant free school meals, and there are other areas that they're concerned around procurement and the breakfast. So I'll go through the three from England. So the top three in order. The first one was, as you would expect, to make a positive case to retain universal infant free school meals and also to expand it into Key Stage 2. So 71% of the membership that was there, they think is the main challenge for us. The platform for helping to deal with child poverty in the UK, including feeding during holiday periods, that is the number 2 concern and challenge. And finally, again, no surprise with Brexit, it's managing food costs. 41% of the members are concerned about that. And myself, we deliver the meals in Derbyshire. We've seen food prices go up this sort of first 6 months of the year, and it's been quite significant in some areas. So, and I know for everybody it's been the same, and we've had to carry out various actions. We've looked at the menus and had to make adjustments. So going over across to Wales then. So the three main challenges in Wales. Number one, changes to the procurement system for the public sector in Wales, 65%. And on Wednesday I was talking to one of the suppliers from Wales, John from Langfords, who I've known for quite a long time, and we were just talking about this procurement process. I think it's still ongoing, isn't it? So that's still a concern. Number two would be secure the funding for those local authorities currently paying the living wage. And again, in England as well, this is It's still something that has to be managed. We pay the living wage in Derbyshire. It's fantastic for the staff, but it does cause problems for the differentials. So we have our kitchen assistants are on the same rate of pay as our supervisors. And I know that in other authorities this is definitely an issue. So that's something that where I work that they're looking at, and it will be an ongoing job to try and resolve that. The third one there was providing a platform for helping to deal with child poverty in the UK, including feeding during the school holidays. And we've all seen the fantastic work in Cardiff around the SHEP programme. So on to the last slide then. So this is really what's going to guide the board for the next 12 months and give us the mandate. What issues should the LACA board focus on for the next 12 to 18 months? And again, the highest score in there was to secure the future of universal infant free school meals, England only. For Wales, to lobby the Welsh Government for the introduction of universal infant free school meals in Wales. Well, that was quite interesting, 88% there. So we'll be having some discussions around that. In England, to lobby to extend universals into Key Stage 2. So yeah, we're feeding all the infants. Let's go and feed all the juniors now. I think that's a fantastic idea. When we talked about this in Derbyshire, I don't think it would take a lot for the infrastructure to achieve that. We've spent all the money on the kitchens already, haven't we? And I think that it's almost there, really. You wouldn't really need a lot more work. And the staffing levels, etc., it was something that would be a lot easier to do, I believe, than when we did the Key Stage 1. So that's a real positive. Continue to promote LACA as the voice of the school food industry to ministers and MPs. 45% both England and Wales. So I'm sure we will be continuing to do that. Producing robust industry research to support the continued development of the school food service. So yes, we've got obviously the research that's been carried out on behalf of LACA by EPI. That will be coming through at the end of this year or early next year. But there's lots of other industry research around. All our colleagues that work in the industry and other lobbying groups are providing information. And I think, working together with them, we can put together the case to keep it going. And finally, lobbying the Welsh Government to further extend the school holidays enrichment programme, which is 60% in Wales.
Thank you very much indeed, Tim. So that's quite interesting, actually, that you did the surveys in both countries, and actually very similar things seem to come out of it. But perhaps we could start really with that opening gambit about UIFSM. It seems to be safe at the moment. How do we stop this being a political football? I'll come to you in a minute, Sharon, but how do we stop this being a political football? Because surely we just need to embed this as core policy. I think even many people supporting the Conservative Party were amazed when that was removed from the manifesto. So surely we need to move beyond that. So Sally, perhaps you'd like to start off. How do we embed it as core policy?
I mean, I think that is the fundamental aspect. We do definitely need to embed it. And I think that we need to call for the Department for Education to do a proper evaluation. The government really need to understand the full impact of the policy, whether it be the educational benefits, the health and actual behaviour. So for me, it's that. And again, it also encompasses things like the benefits for parents. It helps their income levels. And really, we've heard some fantastic good news stories from head teachers, and we really need to ensure that we get some form of longitudinal study over a number of years to look at it as a whole. And really that does equate to the Education Department having to sit up and carry out a proper evaluation. And that would be 1% of basically the actual investment that they have made. That's all they need to do, is spend 1% of the £600 million to then provide us with the answers that we really need to know, and I think from that it would be self-perpetuating then, and you know it couldn't be, it would be in front of them.
Jeanette, do you have anything to add to that?
I think Sally's just said the evaluation is absolutely crucial, and I think all the panel would agree. And I think also what we've got to do is, Scotland at the moment are evaluating theirs, and we need to keep an eye on what's happening there and look at that.
And what about you, Linda?
Yeah, it's interesting you said earlier about, you know, why is food still a political football? This is, you know, we're talking about feeding children. So much so that we've actually got a UN convention that talks about children's right to food, and yet every time we have a new election or we have a new prime minister or you know, something else changes, suddenly it's no longer a right. And you know, I reflect back to something Candy said last night, which really resonated with me. You know, there isn't a single child in this country that claims a benefit, and yet we always talk about free school meal benefits. You know, this is an educational setting. Children are at school learning how to become responsible adults. Surely part of that is being able to take care of themselves, look at themselves and be productive and healthy in the future.
I thought that was a wonderful statement, actually. I thought the other thing that I thought we all agreed with now is that if you give it universally, you remove stigma. And the whole point was that many children didn't have them because they didn't want to feel stigmatised. So, Sharon, perhaps I can come to you as a politician. And obviously, you're one of the good guys in the all-party parliamentary group.
I like to think so.
Well, I like to think so too. What's going wrong?
I agree with everything that's been said, obviously, and I think that we do have to win the argument, not just with politicians, but with the country as a whole. And it should be viewed the same way universal education is, universal healthcare, and that we shouldn't, you know, nobody says, oh, I mean, there's always issues about funding the NHS, but nobody disagrees anymore or puts it in their manifesto that we should scrap the NHS or we should scrap universal education. And yet, food still, as we see, you know, is sort of, oh, it's expensive. That £600 million should be spent on something else. You know, lots of things that are good and are right are expensive. And we've got to get to that stage, because on the doorstep, it was interesting. You would get people that thought it was disgraceful, and other people that would say, well, yes, but there's a point, you know, I can afford to buy my kids their food. Why should I be getting, you know, something from the state, something for nothing? I'd be going, you're not getting it for nothing, you're paying your taxes. Yeah. You know, it's a part of the fabric of our country. It should be a given, it shouldn't be
also there are hidden economics there, because you've then got to work out who is viable, who is entitled, and so that's a really very crazy argument. Obviously there's an all-party parliamentary group, so I would assume on all parties you tend to agree, mostly.
Yeah.
So where is it going wrong, and why, and I know you're obviously in a different party, why was it dropped from the manifesto? Was it because there was a kitchen cabinet running that, do you think?
I think so, and again, because the needed to find the money to, you know, put into the schools budget, and I think it was under threat once before. Nicky Morgan had sort of seen it as a cash cow. We'd had the campaign, we saved it, and then again it was seen as something that was an easy win or an easy cash grab to use for something else. And so, yes, you know, on the all-party group, the people who've signed up to it, you know, we've now got Zach Goldsmith as one of our vice chairs. We've got Layla, the new Lib Dem, Layla Moran, the new Lib Dem MP, is one of our vice chairs. So it's totally cross-party. But, you know, until we have the evaluation, and a government-led evaluation that proves categorically, you know, a lot of us in the room, we all know the work and why they're the right thing to do. But until you've got those hard facts and figures, perhaps, it's a no-brainer. But, you know, we are, for 1%, for that 1% of that money, we could win this argument once and for all.
Yeah. Andy, what's your feeling on it?
Well, I think we're in a dangerous time. I mean, first of all, we have governed with no care for too long, and too many organisations have made money out of the elements within our society that can least afford it. And one of the areas that I was appalled by, and still am, is that of all of the industry bodies that got engaged with this, the Food and Drink Federation did not, and they are the manufacturers of the UK who are probably benefiting from the greatest profit. So for me, there's been a sea change. I don't think it matters where you think politically. what's happening is people are beginning to think socially. You know, Britain has become an uncaring society, particularly if you're living on a high salary or you're a captain of industry, where you're beginning to forget the roots and bounds of our business. And I think the reason I got engaged was I would probably see myself as a captain of industry, but actually you've only got to look around life and see the work that people are doing, particularly in schools and in educating children and in feeding children great healthy food. And you recognise it's for tomorrow. And any captain of industry wants to have someone coming through for tomorrow that will work with them. And it isn't about saving money. It really is about moving forward and moving forward hard. And I suppose for LACA, and I've said it quite a few times, LACA's disbenefit has been that it isn't a massive organisation that is able to go to, say, today's Conservative government and get Sir whatever his name is banging on with his tax and his contribution. It is a service, and service industries are often forgotten. And therefore, one of the gaps that we had was LACA was a lone voice, supported very ably by Sharon, desperately trying to get people engaged, and people were not engaged enough. Right down to the British Hospitality Association, who basically said to me, well, it's not really hospitality. And I asked their chairman, what is it? It's hospitality to children. And I think what we have to do, and I don't think the game is won, I think we won our first stage. Yeah. I still believe that we have to bring together every single body within our industry and fight this to governments to make sure that this policy is never, ever revoked. Because to me, it's one of the most appalling and easy wins for a government to take away from kids.
Tim, what would you add to that? I mean, is one of the other issues that government, in my understanding, government is so fragmented. You've got health, you've got education, you've got these various departments. No one's really wanting to take responsibility. What would you add? How do we get this message across once and for all? And to take Andy's metaphor, how do we win the game, set and match?
As Andy said, I think that's a fantastic point, and you know, I'm thinking about the USA and how they work over there and how powerful that is, and maybe that could be a good way into it. I think there's the evaluation will be a key that will help us. But I was talking with Lee from Oak Hill yesterday about, you know, and Sharon will know, it's understanding the statutory regulations, and free school meals are a statutory regulation that would never go. So universal infant free school meals needs to become part of that. It will never go. It will never come up for discussion. And I need to understand how that process would work, how if we could do it, and that would be something that we would then work on.
And is that something we need more data on? How does one affect that?
I think we can find that. I think we can get that data quite easily. It's then looking at that data and deciding on what actions we can take and getting the industry involved in it and putting the case forward.
And Sharon, coming back to you again, you know, as a politician, what would be helpful for you from us?
More of what you're doing. I say and this might preempt one of your later questions, but every time I come, I always remind people how powerful you all are as a lobby from the sector, but also just as regular constituents. You know, you all have to get out there, make nuisances of yourselves with your MPs. You all have an MP. Write to them, invite them into your schools. You know, write to them, tell them stories about, you know, little Johnny said. You know, give them the story that you've all come across that child. You know, whether we're talking about their free school lunch or the new thing as well, we're all campaigning on Meals and More holiday hunger. Get them into the schools and then, you know, make sure you have those conversations, because don't think that because we know it all, you know, we're know-it-alls, you know, but we get this. Don't think that they necessarily will or that they'll have even heard some of these messages. You know, if they're interested, depending on what they're interested in as an MP, they might all, you know, ask them something about Iraq or Syria or defence policy. They might be able to give you chapter and verse. So those MPs don't think they're going to know anything about the school food sector. So you need to be
Perhaps I can
making
just
them
throw this
aware.
open to all of you. Should we consolidate on where we are now with UIFSM, or should we say we want it for Key Stage 2? Is this a battle we should be waging now?
Yeah.
Because my concern is that you wage one battle and then you win that, and then it's going to be much harder to try and expand it.
Yeah.
I'll throw it open to you, Jeanette and Linda. What do you think?
I think it's really tough, isn't it? Because we are fighting the battle to keep what we've already got, and I don't think we should underestimate the battle that we've still got on our hands. It's not won. You know, we've had it twice. It is going to come up again. It's always going to be. It's a very, very expensive policy, and at the moment we've got this problem of, you know, we all know in this room just how important it is. We see it every single day, the impact it has. We talk to teachers, we talk to head teachers about the difference it actually makes to children's lives, their behaviour, their learning in class. But we don't have the evidence yet, and we need that. And, you know, ultimately it comes down to that. It's the only way we're going to win this argument. I think it's just irresponsible of government to make any decision without the evidence, because, you know, they can't just pull a policy without evaluating
the evidence,
it. But
what do you think is the most compelling evidence? Is it about attainment? Is it about achievement in school? Is it the fact that you're going to get better grades? Is it that you're going to reduce the burden on the health service in 20 years? What's the time frame for this?
I think the financial, you know, argument to this particular government is always going to be the one. I think, you know, we shouldn't underestimate the challenge we've got with an evaluation, because, you know, unfortunately, when the policy was implemented, there was no baseline done, and, you know, you're always going to have that problem of being able to categorically prove it's this policy that's improved attainment in any way. And so, you know, we've got to try and work around that challenge, and the way of working around that to me is financial. You know, we're not just talking about feeding children, making them healthier and improving their lives for the future. We're talking about the amount of money that's generated by the industry, the amount of employment that's generated from this increased service, the impact that this will have on local and national employment figures. All of those things are stuff that this government will have to listen to, because it is part of, you know, their own rhetoric, I guess.
Yeah,
So
Andy,
for me,
you're
that's
nodding vigorously at that.
I totally agree. I think that there's a huge naivety in the power of this body, but equally there's also an ignorance in what's going on. I mean, I brought with me, it went to print before the announcement, The Grocer, which is the biggest paper for retail and manufacturing. What are they focusing on in July? Packed lunches. They had assumed that this wouldn't go through, so they advertise here, how can you get your packed lunches going? I mean, this is one of the biggest magazines in our industry, being advertised by many manufacturers, talking to those manufacturers how they can take our children back into unhealthy food. When you have a body like The Grocer producing this on July the 1st, and they must be, you know, eating their hats at the moment, and putting that back out into the marketplace, you begin to recognize the game that we're fighting. And so I do nod vigorously, because everything you said, David, is right. You know, it is going to affect children's health in the future. It is going to affect education. It is going to create inequality depending on how much cash comes into your house. It is going to create hardship for certain families, and it goes on and on. And I think that any government that can ignore that, if they look at the cost of 650 million versus what will go forward, I mean, it's billions. You know, and I remember I wrote to the Prime Minister in absolute fury 3 times and asked one question, really: how educated are you on this subject? And if you measure the cost of education, try measuring the cost of ignorance, because I believe it's ignorance that's creating the problem that we have, and what we have to do is to fight and educate right across the industry. But the thing that we have to do is to do it together. It isn't just LACA. It is about wholesalers like myself. It is about food distribution companies, the hospitality industry. Any one of us that are involved in the food chain has to work together, because this is vital for tomorrow, in my opinion.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. Sharon, is there a problem if you are a constituency MP and you have a large manufacturer of, say, packed lunches in your constituency and they lobby you hard? Do you go with your conscience or do you go with your vote?
Well, I think on this you would go with the evidence, which is only 1% of packed lunches are as healthy as a school dinner has to be. So, no matter what they might be lobbying, that would be my argument back to them. It's not that I would want to put them out of business, and, they can all diversify. All of those things that go into packed lunches can go into picnic. Packed lunches when families go off on picnics. It doesn't mean that they have to be in our packed lunches when children are at school. I would ban packed lunches. I've said that years ago. I don't think we need, when I got obsessed about this when I went to Sweden 10 years ago, and I said, where are the children with the packed lunches? And he looked at me and said, why would they need a packed lunch? We can provide whatever dietary requirements are. And I went, oh. And that's when I realized, I said, so all the children get, and he says, is there anything wrong with this food? Why would the children not want to be eating this food? And I went, yeah, of course. We don't have to have packed lunches in school at all. So, I would say to that manufacturer, ply your trade elsewhere.
Yeah. Very good. Right, any questions from the floor? Let me open it out to the floor. I'm sure you have lots of questions for the panel. Yeah, Camilla's racing across the front.
Hi, Brad from Plymouth Catered. Can I just go back to some of the statistics? And it seems to me that there were, in even numbers, 30% of our own members who didn't think universal infant free school meals should be saved. 30% of the people in this room didn't think that was a priority. And that's a bit of a worry, isn't it?
Yes. Sally?
Yeah, it certainly is. And, if they're not convinced, how are we going to convince others out here? I mean, can I please ask the audience here today, do we all agree that we need to save universal infant free school meals? Surely it's a foregone conclusion.
Do you want a show of hands?
Yes.
Or do you want to? It'd be quite interesting, wouldn't it?
Yes, could we have a show of hands, please?
I'll get the list, Brad, and I'll give you the names.
Where is that? Yeah,
Does
please.
anybody not?
Yes.
Well, that might be a little unfair. And they might get shot. This is your exit out of here. Onto the M1.
For me, it's integral to the school day, and I think it is about the head teachers, and they are our supporters too. Let's not forget that, and we're in it with them because a child can't be educated if it isn't well fed. It's as simple as that.
I also think there are softer parts to this as well, because we talk a great deal about society, about children not being able to communicate with each other, with not being able to talk to each other, and that's because they don't sit down. If they have the meal, not only are you doing a great service to them in terms of their health, nutrition and education, it's that societal thing, isn't it, of getting them to sit down and talk.
That's so important. That's a whole... I love the family dining, and I know it can't happen in all schools and doesn't, but where it does happen, I think it is the best example, where they all sit and they pass the food around and feed each other and all clear away, and that was the model that I saw in Sweden that sort of evangelized me into this. And those social skills, children eating at a table with a knife and fork, we can't assume that they all do that at home, and lots of them don't. And you hear about, when the kids are starting school, and you will all have seen it firsthand, where, they don't really know how to use cutlery. And you would think that would be a basic life skill that they've learned by the time they start school, and they don't.
Jeanette?
And I think that's why, obviously with Food for Life, it's not all about the food on the plate, it never has been. But my question to you guys is, why are we talking about 650 million for universal infant free school meals when we don't talk about it costs $1 million to educate children? Why isn't it together?
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I'm not quite sure which budget it should come out of, because I'm of the mind that maybe food at school should come out of health. I don't know whether that's even possible, Tim, or Sharon.
Sure.
It is, and also with regard to Katie, she was the Undersecretary of State at the Department of Agriculture in America, and this is something that we discussed at the last all-party group about taking this to Michael Gove's doorstep and, maybe planting an idea in his head, like the pun, in his head that, I've heard him, he was at the first reception of the NFU in Parliament, taking questions from them, and he sort of laid out there how proud he was of the school food plan and putting cooking on the curriculum, or back on the curriculum, as I reminded him, and talked about the how good the school food plan was, universal infant preschool meals, and the farmers were all talking about the school food journey and what he was going to do about making sure you educate children more about that. So I thought, this is where we need to link it back up. If he's so proud of his time at education with regard to the school food plan, bring it with regard to the school food, the journey, the food journey, and take a leaf from the American model, perhaps.
Peter?
Sharon mentioned earlier on that universal free school meals has been under threat now twice in just over a year. What is the alternative if it does go? Understanding we want it embedding, we want it for 25, 30, we want it for generations ahead, there is benefit, we know there are. However, if it does go, what is the alternative?
Well, I just don't think we should even be considering that. I'm for taking it forward to all primary children, and that's originally what the Labour government started off in 2009. The actual original pilot was for universal primary provision, and it wasn't about the infants. It was a case, I think, at the time of the school food plan came into existence, and obviously government must have then looked for the figures and thought, well, perhaps we can't take it for every primary school child, but let's do Key Stage 1. So that's my assumption there. But you know, why are we having to think about something that we've just had the government minister confirm on Tuesday, that they have accepted that is the policy.
Okay, can I just throw something in here, which is that, after today, we're all going to go home. I think whether this is true or not, Theresa May and the government will limp on probably throughout the recess. There may then well be a snap general election. What is LACA going to do now in terms of crisis strategy? Because this is going to come up again, and it's going to come up very quickly. So what is the crisis strategy, and how long have you got to affect it, and what do you want people to do? I'm going to go down the table, actually. Yeah, start, Tim.
Sorry, Dave. Well, we have a strategy. We have a plan. It's around the evaluation that we're carrying out. It's around getting the DFE to do an evaluation. It's about that campaign. It's about the government also understanding Brexit, and perhaps we're going on to Brexit as well, which is a concern. Childhood obesity, and linking it all together.
And what timeline do you have for this evaluation?
The one that we're carrying out will be the end of this year, and we can't get that any quicker. Yeah. So that's in the process now. But as far as all the other actions, then we meet every month and we re-evaluate what we're doing. Because everything's changing so quickly.
Everything is changed, Jeanette.
Personally, I think now we've got this window of opportunity, and we've got to make the very, very best of what we've got. And what we've got, for me, what I would like to see, we have got to make the food the very, very best it can be. We have got to look at where the produce is coming from. How much are you guys spending? Let's say, Brad, how much are you spending in Plymouth? Get that out, the local produce, and that's the economics. So if you can all do that and then feed it back into LACA, we have got to get parents. There is still this perception, in fact I had a tweet the other day, of a burnt sausage roll and 2 spoonfuls of beans on a plate, and a parent, we all know the Mr. Jolly, he tweeted it, and we don't need that, because in the main school food is now brilliant, what I see across the board, but there are pockets, and we've got to improve on that, because that's what people will pick up on. They don't pick up on the good, they pick up on the bad. And so we've got to, as I say, really get our act together, really make a big strive to say we are the best. And those guys out there are the best.
Yes, good point, Jeanette. I mean, one of the things we will be doing as of tomorrow is getting our data bank up to date. I think we showed with the information we gave out on the previous saving it, 17,000 staff will lose their jobs.
Yeah.
We can do a lot more work on that, and we've got the network to get that information, and that is facts. And when you hit them with facts, all around local, how much do we spend on local food, how many staff are there, how many kitchens are there, that will help.
Perhaps I could just ask Sharon. I mean, we were talking last night. When the snap election was announced, I know that you and Daniel sort of sat down and decided what policy you were going to put forward to the leader of your party. How fast does government and the opposition work in terms of getting those manifestos? Are they literally written on postcards?
Well, I don't know how the Conservative one was written. I think it was written
Poorly, I would say, yeah.
A kitchen table with a couple of people, but ours was extensively. I mean, we the work I'd done sort of in the years leading up to that snap general election came into its own, and every shadow minister was asked to put sort of their top 10. I had a top 20. I think we couldn't get it below 20, and I put them in order and made sure, that the continuation of and the extension of universal infant free school meals to universal free school meals was there, and it was fully costed. But also things around, you might have noticed we had policies to have the next generation of children being the healthiest in the world, and a whole host of policies around that. And if I can just add a plug, Chris Bryant was drawn top of the list of private members' bills. So he's got number 1. So that's a bill that you can get through, and you'd probably have a very good chance of getting it through. And he's got a ballot out at the moment to not just his constituents, but everyone can enter the ballot. And one of the things we put in our manifesto was around advertising and labelling of food, and that's one of the 6 bills. So if you want to sort of see that progress, and it would mean foods high in fat, salt and sugar would be banned before the advertising before the watershed of 9 p.m, but also there'd be colour-coded labels on packaged food. So you can vote online for that bill. So, that was one of the things we'd gotten into the manifesto. So, we were ready to go, and obviously we got about 6 of our top list into the manifesto. Now, I think next time round the Conservatives will maybe take a more consultative approach.
Yeah. There was no doubt. I think without being political about it, there's no doubt that 2 people wrote that manifesto, from what I gather, and there wasn't any consultation. And I know certainly Conservative members of Parliament were pretty shocked by their own manifesto. So
I don't think that'll happen again. So people have probably got more chance in the run-up to a possible snap general election to influence your MP to then therefore influence the manifesto.
When's the election going to be?
Oh, I don't know.
Come on, you do.
Oh, I don't know. I think we'll have a new lead. I think they'll keep Theresa May as long as they can, and then they'll change. Then they'll try and carry on again as long as they can, because I think I think we were even ahead in the polls the other day.
I think today's poll shows that you are ahead.
So they're definitely not going to, want to go to the country if they think we're ahead. Because when there were 20 points ahead, look what happened.
Yeah. Well, I said to you when I went away on holiday, there were 24 points in the lead, and when I came back a week later, there were 4 points in the lead. So that shows how quickly politics moves.
At the moment,
So Sally, given that, and obviously you've got some great advocates for LACA and for the work that we're doing here with Sharon, is it a matter of ramping up with some of the other parties, the Liberal Democrats, with the Conservative Party, and finding those key allies that can then club together and just ensure that, because surely what we have to do is depoliticise this completely, because this is ridiculous that we're playing ping pong with it.
Quite. It doesn't need to be a political football, most certainly. And it is about getting out there and meeting your MPs and to actually show them the benefits. And that is what we will be doing strategically in LACA. We will work with Oak Hill Communications on our political lobbying, and Tim will be taking that forward, meeting all the new MPs out there to actually, ensure that we gather that momentum. And as Jeanette has said, we have got an opportunity, and we must seize the moment and address some of these things that are in that Grocers magazine as well. So
okay, Andy.
I think we have a very short window of opportunity for a number of reasons, and I think we're right to depoliticise the whole thing. But today we have to bring together all of the organisations who eventually, in some cases kicking and screaming, came to the party. we have to get together the Food and Drink Federation. We have to get together the NFU, and in fact I've already written to the NFU. You've only got to start looking at some of the issues that we have post-Brexit to recognise how important farming is going to become to our industry and to GB. And we have to ensure that people like the Food and Drink Federation wake up and smell the coffee. And I believe, we can do that in 2 or 3 different ways. Bring all those bodies together with LACA and put a full parliamentary paper together that really shows what will happen should we lose it, to make sure it never ever gets onto agenda again. I think that's key. Research is absolutely vital, and I think this has been the one gap that's allowed us not to be able to move forward as quickly as possible. We have the research being done by LACA, which we were very supportive of. There are universities out there today that would love to do this as PhD research. We should take that on, there's no question of a doubt, and take every single thing we've got to move ourselves forward. Without it, I guarantee we'll be fighting this battle again in the next 2 to 3 years. No question of a doubt.
Sharon.
If I can add, Andy's spot on about the Food and Drink Federation, and I had this idea as well. You'll not be surprised to learn, and infiltrated their organisation. And I'm vice chair, I have been for a few years now, of the all-party group for the Food and Drink Federation. And I know Ian Wright, the chief executive, really well, and I get invited along to all. So I've been this is how I like to operate. So I've been sort of laying the groundwork with the key people in that organisation for some time, because I had the same idea that obviously, a lot of the food comes from this sector, from LACA, who are all engaged with you, but the food and drink manufacturers, they are the one, they should care about this as much as all of
570 million pounds worth of food.
Yeah. So I think we need to start sort of engaging them, get them along to LACA events. I can do it, I can use my influence with Ian Wright to get them along. We have had, we'll do it again, Daniel, we've had a joint all-party group.
Daniel, it's on your list.
It's on your list, yeah. We've had a joint all-party group with the Food and Drink all-party group. And John, what's he called? Stevenson, the Carlisle MP, he's the chair of that all-party group, and I get on with him really well. So we should have another one of those and sort of make sure, we're planting the ideas and influencing the right people, because use the carrot approach rather than the stick. I always prefer the carrot, and if that doesn't work, then the stick. But.
Yeah, so you're assembling your war chest. I think that's a very good action point. Linda?
Yeah, I totally support that, the hospitality industry is one of the biggest service industries in the UK, and we should never underestimate the power of bringing that hospitality industry together as one voice. So I think Andy's absolutely right. The other thing I think we should not forget is the power of us as individuals in our own local areas, and I've heard people talk about this. One of the things that the School Food Plan Alliance did last week was take the opportunity, and we begged and borrowed and stole and got Daniel to put it in personal pigeonholes and all sorts, but we've actually written to every single MP in the country just with information about free school meals. And I think if every single person, even just in our industry, we talk about having a bigger workforce than the Navy, if we could just get every single member of staff even writing to their local MP, or getting every school to invite their local MP in. MPs love coming into lunch, don't you, Sharon?
Yes.
You love it. Invite them into your school to actually sample the food. Let's keep this so high up on their agenda.
It's a great photo op. Yes, I know. So get an MP in your school, and you're halfway there to winning that battle.
Absolutely. And then, that goes on the front of your newsletter. That's the photo you'll use that month. And, maybe if you've got permission, for your election, that's the photo we all want. So, get them in. Honestly, we're quite transparent.
You said it, not me. Tim?
Okay, I'd like to propose then that LACA will organise an event to enable this meeting and campaign to happen. So there you go.
Yeah.
Right. So could you just say that again? So
we're proposing that LACA will organise an event to enable the different bodies to come together, as Andy suggested, and we will enable this meeting and campaign to happen.
Brilliant. I think that's a fantastic action point. So that is very tangible, that you've got then, you know, you're targeting cross-party, you're inviting them in, you're getting them into the schools, they're going to be on the front page of the newsletter, they've got their electoral material, and you've got their vote when it comes to making sure we depoliticise this. Any further comments and questions? Yes? Oh, hang on. Andrew's not as quick as he was. Oh, it's going that way first, Linda. Oh.
Can I just add another angle to the argument that as providers in schools, our biggest challenge is that the budget for free school meals is seen as an education budget.
Yeah.
And while other education budgets are being restricted, the free school meals are an easy target to try and save money. We've actually seen tenders being let on that basis.
Who'd like to answer that?
We are up against it as caterers.
Yeah.
You know, realistically, we are. And the difficulty with the way that the government allocates funds to schools, there's, you know, things are not ring-fenced and protected. So that is the difficulty, certainly. I mean, currently, universal infant free school meals comes in a grant. It's linked to, you know, the census days. And so, you know, that's fundamental at the moment. But yes, we don't know about the future. But I think it does go back to what Jeanette is saying. We need to demonstrate the value of the school meal, what is there on the plate, and you know that support is needed from head teachers to support us and recognise that we are providing a valuable service day in, day out, and it is a worthwhile service, and there has to be some costs. You know, they do have to pay for.
But I think Sharon's point is right. There's a window of opportunity. I also think that all parties are going to consider their manifestos very wisely on the past, on what's happened in the past. So Linda, you had a question.
Just talking about the plans for how you would tackle this going forward, and we talked about whether it was either or, Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2. I think it would be a really powerful thing to use at every opportunity that when we're arguing for the retention of Key Stage 1, that if we were to expand it to Key Stage 2, this is what the cost would be and these are what the benefits will be. And so we start to grow the case, we start to sow the seed that not only are we consolidating the argument for Key Stage 1, but we're sowing that seed for what Key Stage 2 might look like. So I don't believe it's, are we fighting for the retention of 1, or should we be arguing for the extension? I think we should and could be doing both alongside, because I think that sort of pernicious drip of information time and time again of repeating that message, it seems to work for the Tories. Say the same thing often enough, loud enough, long enough, it will happen.
Strong and stable didn't work very well, did it?
We'll gloss over that one.
Yeah.
But I think we can get that message out, and it could be a both and not either or.
So Tim, is that, so again, you know, making that Linda's point there, getting together, making sure it's cross-party, make sure the case is there and that you're drip feeding that information.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the right strategy for everybody, and it makes sense. And you've got the economies of scale coming in as well, haven't you? So once you start moving into Key Stage 2, the costs aren't nowhere near as high, economies of scale, etc., etc. It makes sense, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.